You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Well, hey there. Welcome to The Bible Guys. We're so glad you joined us today.
He's Chris and I'm Jeff, and today we were talking about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah, we're getting there, aren't we?
Yeah, it's the next several days we're heading towards the cross.
Yeah.
And the most pivotal moment in all of human history, the resurrection.
You said this right before we started recording, but you said in the next couple episodes, by the end of this week, I think, right? Mm-hmm. We're actually going to get to the place to where, no. How many episodes do we have left in this series?
A bunch.
Oh, we do?
Yeah,
still?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the time we get done with this series, we'll have read every verse in the Gospels.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is really great.
Yeah, it's just another month or so that for us to finish that up, and we'll have gone through every verse in the Gospels.
Which is so cool.
Yeah, super cool. So today, before we get into the study, we're looking at maybe one of the most important segments we do.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Which is dad jokes.
It's my daughter's favorite.
Right? It's a dad joke competition. So, you know what? I'm going to go first because I'm really liking my dad jokes today.
Go ahead.
So if these flop, it's in my delivery. It's not in the quality. I just want to give Desiree props on choosing my jokes today.
Oh, I think she gave you all the good ones.
Did she?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, here you go. Here's my first one. Almost all garden gnomes have red hats. It's a little gnome fact.
Ooh.
Little gnome?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I think that's a funny one.
You like that one?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like this one. This is a good one. This is a good first one.
Okay.
Apparently, exercising helps with decision making. It's true. I went for a jog today, and I decided I'm never going again.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
My wife has a magnet on our refrigerator.
Yeah.
And it says, I didn't intend to go for a run today, but those cops came out of nowhere.
Oh, that's great. That's good.
Yeah, here we go. I love my job. Lately, colleagues have been writing names on the food in the office fridge. I'm currently eating yogurt called Susan. How cute.
Wow. Okay, that's okay.
I think that was a funny one.
All right, here we go. I'd never want to be a vegetation. It's just a huge missed steak.
What?
Uh-huh. It's supposed to be mistake, only it's missed steak. It says, I'd never want to be a vegetation. It's just a huge missed steak.
You think it meant vegetable? Why is it missed steak?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, remember I said that I thought that...
I don't understand that.
I thought that you got all the good ones?
Hey, we should pull her on the show and say, what were you thinking? Let's have a new segment.
Get her out here right now.
That's right.
Go in the back and pull her out by her arm.
That's right. That should be a new segment. What was Desiree thinking this week? There you go.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny.
Would it hurt the makers of avocados to put a different toy inside? I have like 50 wooden balls already.
Oh, jeez. That's hilarious.
The pit inside.
Oh my gosh, did you really bother to explain that to me? I can't believe that you really thought that needed explaining.
That was funny.
All right, here we go. Here's another one of these great ones. My son likes to cause a scene by going up to his loft and playing the bongos very loudly. It's a little dramatic.
A little dramatic?
It's a
dramatic.
Attic.
Yes, a little drum attic. It's the loft.
It's the missed steak.
It's
That's what that is.
You've got a rough set there, buddy. Let me tell you.
That is a great missed steak. Yeah. That's what that is.
It was a sad and disappointing day when I discovered my universal remote control did not, in fact, control the universe. Not even remotely.
Okay, all right. Well, it was written
It's clever.
well.
It's clever.
It
was delivered poorly, but it was clever.
Okay, what do you call a one-legged hippo?
I don't know.
A hoppo.
I like that one. That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay. Here's my last one. A genie granted me one wish, so I just said, I just want to be happy. Now I'm living in a cottage with 6 dwarves and working in a mine. A little bit of Disney humor there.
And I know the other 6 names.
Yeah.
That's so good.
What are they?
Oh, goodness gracious. Are you serious? We don't want to do this, do we?
Okay, go ahead.
All right. I think we can all get them, can't we?
He claims he knows them, but whatever.
I think I can name most of them.
Okay.
Do you really want to do this? Grumpy, Doc.
Of course you name Grumpy first.
Grumpy, Doc, Dopey, Happy, of course, Sneezy, Bashful, and did I say Sneezy?
Yes, you said Sneezy. Sleepy.
Sleepy.
There you
I
go.
almost
Good
had
job.
it. I was just about to say it. Yeah. So
You were going to get it.
All right, here we go. Last joke. I'm writing a book about reverse psychology. Don't buy it.
Okay. Wah.
Yeah, right.
All right. So I don't get the vegetation one. That's the one
Yeah.
that we're going to have to hold her accountable for.
Yeah, everybody.
I think it meant vegetable,
Okay.
right? So if a vegetable is a missed steak, that's funny.
Is it though?
Well, it's better
I
than
never want to be a
vegetation.
vegetable. It's just a huge mistake.
Yes.
Even the word mistake doesn't belong in that
Okay,
sentence.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to save it. Anyways,
Yeah.
that is it right
Yeah.
there. Well, thank you for listening, and that's all we have today.
Yes. That's great.
Okay,
I thought the funniest part of that entire segment was you saying, "Let's get Desiree out of here." That was really funny.
that's right. I'm always in the mood for, you ever see like old horror movies or something, Frankenstein, and the peasants come out with the forks and the pitchforks and the torches.
Sure.
I'm like, I'd totally love to have that character, right?
Yeah.
Just cause trouble, mayhem.
Yeah, what is that called? It's called a raid, I guess.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Matthew.
Kill the beast.
Yeah, exactly. Matthew chapter 26, verse 36 is where we're at today, and so we laugh a little bit today, but we take our faith very seriously, even though we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Very seriously.
This is one of those really serious, big moments.
Actually, it is.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people will resonate with some of what we talk about today. So here's what it says in Matthew chapter 26, verse 36. It says, "Then Jesus went with them to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and he said, 'Sit here while I go over there to pray.' He took Peter and Zebedee's two sons, James and John, and he became anguished and distressed. He told them, 'My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' He went on a little further and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine.' Then he returned to the disciples and found them asleep. And he said to Peter, 'Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation, for the spirit is willing, but the body is weak.' Then Jesus left them a second time and prayed, 'My Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done.' When he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open. So he went to pray a third time, saying the same things again. And then he came to the disciples and said, 'Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But look, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Up, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here.'" In Mark chapter 14, verse 32, it says, "They went to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and Jesus said, 'Sit here while I go and pray.' And he took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, 'My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' He went on a little further and fell to the ground, and he prayed that if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass him by. 'Abba, Father,' he cried out, 'everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine.' And then he returned and found the disciples asleep, and he said to Peter, 'Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you watch with me even 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation, for the spirit is willing, but the body is weak.' When Jesus left them again and prayed the same prayer as before, when he returned to them again, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't know what to say. When he returned to them the third time, he said, 'Go ahead and sleep. Have your rest. But no, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed to the hands of sinners. Up, let's get going. Look, my betrayer is here.' And then, in Luke chapter 22, verse 39, it says, 'Then accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went as usual to the Mount of Olives. And there he told them, "Pray that you will not give in to temptation." He walked away about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you're willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. He prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that his sweat fell to the ground like great drops of blood. At last he stood up again and returned to the disciples, only to find them asleep, exhausted from grief. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not give in to temptation.
So Luke's the only one that includes the angel.
And the great drops of blood.
Which is appropriate for the doctor
That's right.
to record that.
Yeah,
isn't it?
so Luke was a doctor that he talks a lot about the physical things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what's amazing about these three passages, again, this series compares the gospel side by side, same thing, right? So this is found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. What's amazing about it is John gives more detail or insight into the story, and yet it's less verses.
You mean Luke?
What did I say?
John.
Yeah, I meant Luke.
Okay.
I was staring at Luke and I said John. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because actually I was thinking in my mind, hey, John didn't record this.
Yeah, John didn't record it.
Right.
And then you said John. Yeah. But Luke, fewest verses, but
it's the fewest
a lot
verses,
of details.
Yeah. We mentioned before this was a serious moment. Is there a more agonizing moment? I mean, besides obviously Jesus on the cross, I guess that would be the only other agonizing moment that trumps this one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's oh, goodness gracious. To sweat drops of blood. I read a medical look at the crucifixion, and I remember there was a document published. Gosh, I mean, I was in Bible college when I read through it, and it was a pretty lengthy document, and it had talked about how all the greatest doctors in the world got together and pieced together and broke out in groups and just talked about what this condition was. Well, apparently, blood can go through your sweat glands, but it can only this condition is called something. Hemo something, and then but it comes through your sweat glands. The stress level has to be so unbelievably high that that's how rare it is.
Wow!
And so when you sweat great drops of blood, that is actually a thing.
Uh-huh.
Now think about back then when they recorded this. I'm not certain they really understood medically that was even a thing, right? And yet now modern science, right, and medicine. We're able to actually identify.
We know how it happens.
We know how that happens, which is kind of cool. That's almost like a evidence that the gospel's real, right? The stories in the gospel are real.
They're recording a thing they didn't understand that we currently understand.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you said it better than I did. And then,
but they just that's one of those evidences that they just were writing what they saw.
Right.
Because this is not something that they would have looked up on their phone. Gee, I wonder what's happening right now. Oh, I guess that's a thing.
Right.
They had no. Because, I mean, how many people, think of all the thousands of our listeners. I guarantee you, not one of our listeners has ever seen this happen. Right. It's so unbelievably rare that a person can go to that level of suffering and still be alive.
That's right.
Right? So the fact that they recorded what they saw, it's not like it was a thing they've ever seen before, but they just recorded it as fact. And it's one of those little incidental things that proves to me that they are writing what they actually saw. Because it didn't make any sense at all.
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, you might say that's a miracle? ? Like from Jesus, you expect all sorts of things.
Or ancient readers who had no access to the internet would have went, "Come on,
right?
Really?
Right?
It would have just been one or more of those."
Yeah. And by the way, that could have happened, right?
Yeah.
For the first 1,000 years when people were reading this, they could be like, "That's the part of the Bible he didn't sweat blood."
Right.
I've never seen that before. Right. But anyway, as you think about, as a side note, the medical look at the crucifixion, these doctors had walked through everything that we're about to walk through, what happened to Jesus physically, and they say that Jesus was exceptionally strong.
Right. Physically strong.
Yeah, exceptionally physically strong.
Yeah.
Well, obviously spiritual and everything else, right? Mentally.
But to go through these things, carrying the cross, living even through this thing where
and
his blood vessels are literally bursting right underneath the surface of his skin. Right. And coming out in sweat is just that level of stress normally would kill a man. Right. A heart attack or a stroke. Yeah, and then it's no wonder why the angel then comes and comforts him and strengthens him. Right. Ugh. Yeah. And so think about this as well. So we always think Jesus is God. So obviously he can endure a death. He can endure anything, and he's not going to be afraid of such things. Mm-hmm. We could think that. We could be tempted to think that that's not a big deal for somebody who created life and death. And yet Jesus is 100% man. Yeah. So he's 100% God, but he's 100% man. Right. And so he experiences every range of human emotion, including fear and everything else.
And so he had the full experience of stressing so badly, knowing what's coming, and he's in total anguish.
Yeah. So you want to talk about anxiety?
Right.
I guarantee you nobody on our podcast listeners group has ever experienced anxiety to the point of sweating great drops of blood, right?
Right.
So Jesus knows you, and he knows exactly what you're going through. He's been there, right? I read this, and there's a note. It's astounding. As I was like, oh, I'm glad we're doing this one. There's a note in the Life Application Study Bible for Matthew 26:39. That's exactly the way that I was thinking about it. It says, in times of suffering, people sometimes wish they knew the future, or they wish they could understand the reason for the anguish. Jesus knew what lay ahead of him, and he knew the reason. Even so, his struggle was still intense, more wrenching than any struggle we will ever have to face. What does it take to be able to say, I want your will to be done? It takes firm trust in God's plans. It takes prayer and obedience each step of the way.
Yeah.
Most of us feel like if I just knew what was going to happen next, I would feel better. Jesus did, and he didn't.
Right.
Right? Jesus felt better in the context of saying, nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours be done.
Right.
Jesus' peace came in saying, God, you're in control. It did not come in knowing what was coming next. Right? A lot of us were kind of a little bit control freaks, and we want to control the future. We want to control what's going to happen next. And that didn't help Jesus. He knew it was coming, and he still experienced extreme anguish. Now, he knew he was going to be separated from the Father, right? That was part of it. He knew that he was going to become sin for us. He was going to take on all the sin of humanity. These things are things that he would have never have ever experienced in all of his experience at all, ever. And so this was going to be extremely difficult. It was a horror kind of an idea for him, but him knowing it didn't help him feel better either. And so, I was thinking about this. Have you ever known people that get in a car accident, not to be overly graphic, but people that are in a car accident that tense up, they know it's coming and they tense up, tend to have greater injuries than the person who's drunk and doesn't even respond or doesn't even see it's coming and they don't react, right? And so I think sometimes life becomes more traumatic because we're anticipating how bad it's going to be, as opposed to just saying, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done, right? When we grip the steering wheel too tight, when we get all tense, everything hits us harder than if we just would relax, let God take care of it and say, whatever you're going to do, God, I trust you in it. That kind of peace will bring a lot more, I think, resilience in our lives. And, God sends in the middle of that struggle, he sends an angel to minister to Jesus. And I think, if you trust him, because it comes after Jesus says that, right? I want your will to be done, not mine. Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, right? So Jesus submits to God's will, and then God goes, hey, let me make sure you're comforted here.
So let's talk a little bit about Peter, James, and John. First of all, he asks those three again, right, to go with him, and they get to experience something intimate with Jesus on a level.
Well, they could have, but they were sleeping.
Well, they sort of did, but missed out on most of it, right? So they did a little bit.
They were in the vicinity.
Yeah. But he says, come pray with me. And they obviously experience him feeling anguish. And then when he comes back and wakes them up and says, can you not pray with me at least 1 hour? There's no question they sense his anguish. They sense his desperation, but they're overwhelmed with sleep.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of a sad moment for Peter, James, and John, because we can relate too. So the first thought that I have is this, because I can relate in a lot of different ways. Number one is disappointing God. There are moments in our lives where we, like it or not, good or bad, it's not as if God's disappointed beyond the, point of forgiving us, because obviously he forgave Peter, James, and John, and gave them understanding by getting up the third time and saying, go ahead and sleep. Yeah. Right. But so even when we do disappoint God, he's not going to look down on us. But it's not only disappointing God and trying to, do something and failing, but also there's spiritual warfare that's happening to a degree that they are apparently absolutely clueless about.
Oh, right.
Had they known exactly what was going to happen, because, they're trying to piece together all the prophecies, even though that Jesus was pretty clear,
right.
They just didn't know the time was at hand, even though he's been saying here, I'm about to be betrayed, the time has come. Hey, let's look at the Passover feast. This is my blood. This is my body. All these different things. If you've
seen me, you've seen the Father.
Yes. I mean,
right.
all these things predicting his death
yes.
is what I'm referring to. And it just appears like they just don't realize that the hour is right upon them. Right. And so they're sleeping. And I would think that if they knew and understood what was happening, they'd be awake. Right? I mean, that'd be a pretty big adrenaline rush to see an angel comforting Jesus.
And Jesus is seeing prayer as a spiritual warfare thing. So he says, keep praying so that you'll not give into temptation. Right. So he sees this as a spiritual encounter that's about to happen, and we need to be prayed up and ready. And they're like, yeah, I'm really sleepy. So they're living only in the physical and ignoring the supernatural, the spiritual, right? Yeah. And Jesus sees it totally different here.
Yeah, so I just wrote a message last night, and we're entering into a series about angels and demons. Mm-hmm. And the thrust of the message is in sort of an introductory idea that helps us all be aware that the spiritual realm is just as real as the physical realm that we live in. Like that idea is either a great reminder for all Christians, or it's a brand new piece of information for those who really don't think about it. But it is, I think it's necessary for all of us to really truly think about that, because I believe that Peter, James, and John, they were on the mountain for the transfiguration. Like they saw the spiritual realm. They understood that there are things that happen. They were with Jesus. They saw miracles. And yet I think even they need to be reminded there is a spiritual war that's happening around us. Right. And I think that when as Christians, we know it, but we need to be reminded of that probably every day, that there's a spiritual battle.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to pray. Watch and pray, he says.
That's right. That's exactly right. So that looks like our time. Any last thoughts? We're going to move on to next day.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you, Jeff. Last thoughts. Good job. All right. Well, hey, we'll see you next time on The Bible Guys.